Hello everybody, this is a bit of a different kind of video. Travysty has asked everybody on the MEC pod to create a tier list of the most impactful roles within the MEC. He reached out to me, he reached out to Mac, and he's obviously going to be doing one himself. We're all going to be individually making these tier lists and submitting videos. We're not collaborating on these together, like creating a tier list together. We're going to make individual tier lists, talk about our reasonings on the podcast and obviously through this video. And yeah, this isn't necessarily a tier list on the players within the MEC, but more the importance of each role within the MEC at the moment. And yeah, I'm going to get started with my tier list. And I think there's going to be a lot of different opinions depending on who you talk to. For me, the most important role within the MEC at the moment, and I think if you have watched me cast or listened to me cast, I stress the importance of these two roles very, very often. I obviously I'm a little biased, but I think for the most important role, the number one important role within the MEC right now is jungle. I think if you take a look at all of our top teams with Purdue, ONU, GVU, and Ottawa, you've got players like Doubtful, Prod, Julian, Castle, all fantastic junglers in their own right. And you can kind of see when these teams face off, if a certain jungle is falling behind or they can't get their win conditions off in the early game, if they can't have any impact, generally, the team that has the more impactful jungler, the more impressive looking jungler on the day or anything like that, generally they will tend to win. Obviously, you get into scenarios where like there's these late game scenarios, people will throw, so on and so forth. But a lot of that early game, a lot of, you know, how our games are set up and how the games are set up in the MEC is based off of where the jungler is, what he's doing, and a good jungler or a winning jungler within the MEC I've seen just makes the lives of every other laner so much more easier. So I think jungle is the most important role. Now I wouldn't be mad, and obviously my second most important role right now is mid. I wouldn't be upset if you swap these two and say mid's more important than jungle or jungle's more important than mid. I think a good jungler can relieve a lot of mid lane pressure and can unlock the mid laner to do more stuff, and vice versa, right? If you have a winning mid or a mid laner that is just so much more dominant than the other mid laner or is in a winning matchup, it unlocks the jungler to do a lot of things, right? Invading raptors, invading wolves, potentially getting vision down, going for objectives. Having mid prio in League of Legends, at least in the last 3 to 4 years, has been very, very important and allows you to do so much. Having jungle and mid prio allows you to unlock bot lane, allows you to dive, do all this stuff. So I'm not upset, or I wouldn't be like surprised if some people had like mid number 1, jungle number 2. But for me, like I said, I've been very, very impressed with at least our top 4 junglers in the league. Even some of the junglers in the lower level teams, right? If you look at players, you know, like Cheese Ravioli, like Kaiser, like Mike, I think they're all very, very good. And I think, you know, sometimes they can make or break a win. But yeah, I think mid lane is the second most important role. All our mid laners, I think every single mid laner has looked decently impressive across the board, right? Doubtful Klexo, super strong mid jungle duo. Prod and Blonde, super strong mid jungle duo. Even ONU, right? With Julian and Kato, very strong mid jungle duo. Jinkall Castle, like the standard, right? The standard back-to-back champions, all that stuff. Yeah, I think jungle mid. I think it's really hard to have any of the other roles above the 1 and 2. I think where it gets a little bit more contentious is these last 3 of importance. And I feel like top lane is not the most important role right now, or it doesn't have the most impact, right? And the reason I say this is very often we'll get games where like the lower ranked team or the team that's supposed to lose or the team that is you know, lower in strength will just get solo kills on the enemy top laner, right? Prank being a perfect example, right? He's somebody that has been getting a little bit wild, but it's not just Prank, right? Jason has been dominating on Zac. He does very, very good, gets solo kills consistently. I think if you look at Quick Slice, I think if you look at Oxy, you look at even somebody like Strict Proctor, who is on a role swap and is still able to fit and function into Grandview University. Don't get me wrong, Proctor's a good player. I'm sure you can adapt. But when you have people that are lane swapping in the top lane and are still like top 3 in the league in terms of your team, I think it kind of goes to show you how weak, I guess, or less impactful top lane is at the moment. And yeah, I think top lane is the least important role. I will say right now, I'm gonna put support above AD carry, right? So it's gonna go support and then ADC. And the reason I have it this way, and one could argue AD carry is very important right now, obviously with performances from like Nightstar, people like Wind King, Scrub McLord tanking a bunch of bans, right? On Cleveland State side, you've got, you know, Toponer on the support role who's doing very, very good. You've got Fat Cat. You've also got people like Pluto. And there's so many good supports and they do so many good things. It's hard. It's hard because in the bottom lane side, you've got Levi, you've got Kai, you've got Nightstar. I feel like right now, a good roaming support is much more impactful, especially with kind of the supports that need to be played right now, right? There's so many things that are so good and they're so different, right? So obviously you've seen like the Nautilus stuff, right? We've seen Rel, we've seen Bard, we've seen Karma in the support role. You have to play AD supports like Ashe, right? You have to learn how to play that. I think impact wise, if you don't have a support that can flex to multiple different champions that are all very good in their own right, it's very, very difficult to succeed in this league. Granted, AD at the moment, there's a couple kind of ADs in the meta right now. You're starting to see some of the more scaling ADs come back in, but like you still need to play Lucian. You still need to play Callista. You still need to play sometimes Jhin, but then there's also like Zeri and stuff like that. I just feel like the support is a bit more important right now because on top of playing for the lane and playing for the 2v2, you also have to look for roam timings. You also can determine the outcome of like grubs, right? Early objectives are so important on like early roam timings and getting to the objective first. How many times have we seen it where like a support will back and we'll see like a skirmish in the top side and whatever support is there for the 3v3 between mid, jungle, and top lane, whatever support gets there first, typically that team will win that skirmish. Typically that team will end up winning that skirmish, getting the objective, whether it's grubs, whether it's potentially Rift Turtle, whether it's just a fight within the jungle, right? Playing for blue and stuff like that. Yeah, I think support has more impact. And also later into the game, the support's job becomes a lot harder, especially if you're on these like engaged supports like Nautilus and stuff. You have to like look for hooks on the AD carry, and like sometimes fights hinge on that. Whereas AD carry right now, I don't know. I feel like teams that have like these top, like teams that typically have the better players in these 3 roles will typically win, in my opinion. Unless you like are just a hard bot diff, like total bot diff, like with bot lane and support. I feel like these 3 roles are the most important right now in the MEC. And if you have pound for pound better players in each of these 3 roles, typically you will beat a team that has better players in the AD carry role and in the top lane role, in my opinion. But I think support is really that crux, right? Because support is like, in my opinion, the swing position, right? Where it could go, if you have the better these 3 roles, you can win. Or if you have the better these 3 roles, you can win. I feel like support is a lot more crucial to determining stuff like that. But like mid jungle can just take over a game sometimes, right? Like the strength of these 2 roles and how they can just cripple bottom side and how they can cripple top side. Like a winning bottom lane cannot affect top lane that much theoretically, but like jungle mid winning or mid winning, oh, he's gonna go bottom lane, he's gonna fucking dive you, he's gonna go top lane, he's gonna fucking fist you with the jungler, you're gonna get 3v1 dove, you're gonna get 4v2 dove. You have no fucking response for that, in my opinion. So yeah, I think this is a pretty solid list.
Alrighty, so welcome on over to the my ranking. I have not from what I'm aware of, nobody from the MEC pod has put out their rankings. We haven't had any influence on each other, so it should be interesting to kind of go back and see how everybody goes together inside of this. So we're going to go ahead and just run through things, and I'll explain my reasoning as we come across, but I do want to reiterate this is based off of the roles and whatnot. This is not going to be like and it's set in the spectrum of MEC. So basically, what's the strongest lane inside the MEC? You know, that's what we're kind of going for here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a quick moment to go through everything inside of this. So first off, I'm going to start off with what I think is undoubtedly the strongest position, and then I'm going to work from the bottom. The reason why, and I thought about this, is because the top, there's not really, I have talking points on it, but it explains itself quite a good bit, and I think it makes a lot of sense inside the idea of the MEC if you actually like go through and watch some of the games. I feel like a lot of us on the MEC pod are probably going to agree on this one. So I'm going to put up here, I'm going to immediately go over, and I am going to be taking the jungle and putting it up in number 1. Reason why did I think the jungle is number 1? Well, it's pretty simple. I think jungle is pretty stacked. I think we've seen a lot of games be won inside the jungle, and I think having a good jungler has shown how prevalent it is. I think the main thing that you can even see from some of the teams that are towards the bottom of the standard is their jungle is fairly good. Now, there is an argument for, alright, but in the spectrum of the MEC, right, you can switch around junglers and probably have the same results. And I disagree with that. I think the junglers that we've seen the most prevalence in, which would be like Julian and Doubtful, would probably be like the two major ones that I'd say is front runners for like junglers out there. Castle, of course. So you got 3 right there immediately. Prod has grown quite a bit. You have Mike, who is a very good player that I think is very, very good as well. There's so many good junglers inside the league, but the incremental leads that they're able to get over each other has been the big deciding part inside of the top 4. And when I look over at the MEC and I'm like, there is a gap in between top 4 and top 5. It's not a considerable, bottom 4. It's not a considerable gap, because I do think Drury and BCU are teams that can kind of strike up above their weight class, and we're going into playoffs, and we're waiting to see if Cornell and Cleveland State are able to hit that same spike that we've seen in the past from like Illinois and whatnot. I do think that you look over here and you have to pay respect to the jungle role. I think the junglers are so iconic for setting their teams up to win their games. Mid-jungle synergy has, of course, been a very big part of that as well. So, yeah, I got jungle up there at the very top. And I just think it is just way too important that if you were to shift around a top 4 jungler and a bottom 4 jungler, while the difference might not be the largest when you look at them like side to side, it's what they've done inside the games that have been the biggest difference. So like Doubtful is just incredibly good. Is probably the jungler that I probably look at being the most standout jungler inside of the season so far. Standout doesn't mean the best, but it means that they have had some pretty big performances. Julian's another one who's very standout. I've said it many a times on broadcast, Castle's never the reason why you lose a game. He's usually the reason you win it. And I already said Prod growing a lot. Mike's the reason that BCU picks up dubs inside of games, right? Like, there's so many different factors that you can look at, but jungle, absolutely number 1, has the largest amount of impact, and absolutely looks busted inside the MEC. Now we're going to go ahead and go back down to the bottom. So the bottom here, the big part about it that I want to talk about is this is probably where I'm going to have controversy, and I feel like I'm not going to have an agreement with anybody on the MEC pod, and we're probably going to end up talking about this just because of the fact that it's a bit wild. I am putting no, I'm not doing top lane. It's bot lane. I think bot lane is not as important this season. I think we have a lot of good bot lanes in the same comparison to jungle. However, Or of our best performing bot laner has been playing Varus. And while Varus can carry your games and whatnot, we have not actually had a huge standout performance from any AD carries. There's been like a couple like big like multi-kill moments inside of team fights, but majority of AD carries, they kind of, I don't know, there's not really moments where I'm like, man, they're really gapping here, right? Like even like the biggest possible like gap that I can recall at the top of my head, which was from Wind King from Purdue Northwest, where they were, I believe they were playing Ashe in the game, and they were like 4-0. They lost a 1v1 immediately to the opposing AD carry, and it was circumstances that they didn't have to put themselves into. So I think between the fact that we're seeing a lot of utility come into play, Seraphine Karma has been a free dub. I mean, Seraphine Senna has been a free dub. I just look over and I'm just like, you know what, in a role that is, you can honestly play mages inside of too, and it kind of covers up and shows you a lot of your weakness. I still criticize the bot lane for like, I think that if you wanted to like play a carry mage, like Karthus is still pretty good, guys. I'm just saying, if you want to play Karthus bot, you get some points from me. But I don't think, I think bot lane's kind of weak in the MEC, just because they're not really the reason that they're winning games. It's just how it is. I don't see any major carry performances, and I won't say never, but more often than not, I don't walk away and be like, man, bot lane was the reason why they won. Like that 80 carry, no. I look over and I'm like, yo, Nightstar's consistently good, right? But I feel like you can get away with just playing a supportive style. We've actually seen that from Briarcliff quite a bit, where you can just kind of sit back and play like that Seraphine combo. I don't find it that important. Inside of the context of the MEC, we haven't had a real standout performance, and I feel like you could probably just take bot lane and you can just say, hey, play Seraphine, and cool. That's it. You're like, all right, I'm doing my part. That's how it is. For next up inside of this, you never guess who it's going to be, right? It's going to be, no, it's not going to be mid lane. I'm not crazy, please. I will say it's top lane. Top lane, we've seen a lot of autofills go up in the top lane. There's a reason inside of CLoL in general, you see a lot of people role swap to top lane. It is the role that is probably the least played. It's most populated by one-tricks when you get into CLoL, is what we run into a lot of times. And a lot of our division is people who have role swapped from like jungle or mid lane into the top lane. There are a couple of top laners that are really good. I think Otzi belongs in that list, and I think Quick Slice actually belongs into that list. And Quick Slice is actually somebody I actually value a lot from Drury. I think Quick Slice is really, really good and very much so slept on, just because they're playing stuff like Gwen, which I think can be very broken in a league where a lot of people are playing tanks, really. Our best top laner that we're seeing performances from right on our top teams are playing some of those tank matchups. And we even had like one of our recent games, and I hate to have that be my bias, right? We're even seeing people playing we're saying Prank. The Mighty have fallen, playing where the Gwen was feared. Now they're locking in Karma top. But it is kind of just the impact of the role, right? It's like, what can I do to impact the team? Well, I need to either be a wall for the team by playing something like the Volibear, the Ornn, the Udyr, or I need to just say, I'm playing Karma and I'm going to shield my entire team, and that's it. We haven't really had a major carry performance. The major carry top laner, I would say, of the season would probably just be Quick Slice for me. Followed right behind them with Otzi. I think those are like the two main people I look at to be big carry performers. Aggression belongs into the conversation, I feel like, with their Gnar performances that they've had. Killian can get up there, of course, with their Gnar performances, but even then, their champ pool does seem a bit limited, because I always bring it up. You get them on a Yordle, they look so good. You get them off of a Yordle, it doesn't look that great. So top lane, don't see it as that important. Just play a tank. It's fine. Next up is going to be the support. Support's very good. Support actually loses points based off of champ pool at the current moment in time. We had a lot of Karma time inside of it. But where it does get points is how do you play it and how you position inside of this. Outside of Karma, we've seen a lot of playmakers, a lot of engagers inside of it. We've seen actually a couple Bard performances from a couple different players. That's been very welcome to see. I love me some Bard. My first time really like doing any kind of like one tricking in a very long time period was actually playing nothing but Bard. Back when Bard first released and everybody was calling me a troll, right? So I have a soft spot for the champion. I have a soft spot for the role. It's my favorite role to play. But inside the MEC, I do think it kind of is, it fits its place in the middle really well. Karma, kind of, the amount of Karma that we've had to see, it's whatever. But the engagements have been very important. I do think if you look at some of the star players inside of the games that have been piloting things like Rel, if you're able to pilot the Nautilus, we've seen some pop-off performances from Tango, who came in and subbed in for Ohio Northern on the Blitzcrank and Thresh, right? The playmaking that comes into play, like Tango was my MVP inside their game, right? Played themselves a mean Blitzcrank inside the game. They can have such an important role going together, and it also helps that they pair together with the jungle, right? Like a lot of people talk about mid jungle, but I actually think support jungle is something that just gets slept on, because if you actually can get like roams off with your support jungle, it's actually pretty nasty. And when we have seen those playmakers come across, it has been very good. And I think that the level of competition for supports have been pretty good. Good roam timers have been coming out from the MEC in general. So I think in terms of the role, I think support is actually very, very strong. It was actually something I sat back and was just like, do I rate it above mid lane? And well, you kind of already have figured out I didn't. And that was mostly just because I looked over and said, the Karma, the amount of Karma play that we've had over the season kind of made it to where it diminished it a bit for me. But haven't had an insane carry performance. It did go up a little bit more just because we've seen a bit more Sennas. So the good Sennas and the fraudulent Sennas have been very easy to have to be exposed. So, but yeah, support, pretty good role. Is kind of the benchmark for really good stuff from the MEC, and I think the top 4 teams all have insanely good supports. And then you go into like I think all teams probably have like really good supports, which is a good foundation to be able to have. So really enjoy that. And then of course in second it is mid lane. Mid jungle synergy matters so much. I think all the top teams have that good mid jungle synergy. And I do think that if you were to take the mid lane away from some of the top teams, you do fall down and suffer. Jinqual is always very consistent inside of the league. Blonde is also very good. Riverside as well. You look over into the mid lane, you got Kaido, who's been having some very big like plays inside of the game, especially on the Azir and the Nico. They've been having some very big engages and snap engages for their team to make things happen. Cammer is another one who's been able to be a very big force together with Mike. You just can't talk about mid enough, and mid pairs so well with the jungle. Every single one of the top teams is a iconic mid jungle role at the current moment in time. So mid is just an easy second place for me. But yeah, that's me on that. So haha.
Hello everybody, what's up? Mac Dewey here with a bit of an interesting piece of content. Us casters on the MEC pod have decided to do a power ranking of positions within the MEC. Now for me, the way I'm going about my power ranking, this is not a list of the groups of players and their overall strength. I'm doing overall like role impact, sort of generalized. So we've got our tier list here on this side of the screen right here, and I'm going to be going through the roles that I think S would be the roles with the most impact, D roles with the most. And I'm actually going to start at the bottom. For me, going in the D tier, something I hate putting top lane down here in the bottom. I was a top lane warrior back in my day of solo queue. I think tops, I enjoy going into top lane, you know, I feel like it's the gladiator arena. You're mostly going to be doing the 1v1 against your lane opponent. We've seen some junglers, I think, start to go on up into the top lane to start messing with things a little bit. But overall, top lane, I think, lands in the D role because it's kind of in a weird place right now. We have seen a lot of crazy top lane performances in the MEC. Shout out Eliza on the Yorick from Friday night in week number 5. That was really fun. I think one of the best top lane performances we've seen all season long. But overall, feels like the role's in a bit of a weak spot. And yeah, that's overall. I feel like top lane's in a weird kind of position and not... thinking about the tier list and overall impact, I feel like top laners, they have the best ability to lose lane and still have an impactful position and still like do things in the game. And so that's why it's kind of in D tier for me. Coming up in C tier, I'm going to put bot lane. I don't know. ADCs have been, kind of at the start of the season. It's been Varus duty. Lane has been mostly poke, priority, wave management, and some of the bot laners make winning lane look so easy, even though it's definitely not, and lane can be really tricky, especially in the 2v2. And so I feel like for bot lane, we'll see as the playoffs go about. Maybe we'll start seeing some more carry performances. I know Nightstar bringing out the Kog'Maw, bringing out the Zeri, Wind King playing Vayne, super exciting. So I wonder with the recent changes if the playoff meta is going to look super different from what we saw in the regular season, but based on where bot lane has been overall, it's landed in C tier for me. For the B tier, I'm actually... This is going to be a hot take. I feel like my fellow casters, shout out Shibby and Travy, are going to put this role a little bit higher, but I'm putting jungle in B tier because... jungle's hard for me because I feel like a lot of people are going to want to put it higher because it's able to impact all 3 lanes. But for me, that's also dependent on how all 3 lanes are doing for you. And so we have seen some jungle masterclasses from a few of the top jungles in MEC. People putting in, I feel like it's kind of that mental battle of trying to figure out from an information standpoint, what's the other jungler doing? How can I make a play that best sort of counteracts what they're doing on the map? And so jungle, I think, is one of the hardest roles, but in terms of overall impact, I'm putting it at B because I think it falls a little short compared to these other roles. At the A tier, I'm putting mid lane. With how crazy mid lane has been, we've seen a lot of fun champions come in. I feel like the mid lane meta has looked pretty different compared to what we saw last season. There's a lot of mages, still a lot of mages, but different mages, right? Cameron's Brand coming out, Nico making an appearance, still some Orianna, so that's a classic. But with the way the mid laners can shape team fights, with their roaming ability, shutting down the enemy mid laner, and I mean, we've seen some Tristana performances just take over the entire map, and so that's why for me mid lane reaches that A tier. And there is only one role left. You might be wondering, Mac, really? But S tier stands for support. I have been so impressed by some of the support play we've seen in the MEC overall. These support players have been popping off. I mean, Rel engages, setting up the early game with Alistar. Overall, I mean, I think support's in maybe one of the more fun positions than we've seen. I'm thinking back to our experience from what we saw last season a little bit, but I'm putting supports in S tier with their ability to take over fights potentially, with a lot of engaged supports, helping the bot laners, just manage the wave. I know we've been seeing a lot of Karma support. That makes things a little, I'll say boring, honest. I'll say it's the personal content bit. Karma support, a little boring, pokes you a lot in lane, shields going crazy. But with those power picks, I think we've seen just how impactful support can be. So support makes it all the way at the top for Mac Dewey's positional tier list. I hope you guys enjoy. Mine is totally going to be the best tier list. Shibby and Travy are small brain Mac is big brain. We'll see what you guys think. Let me know. If you think I'm wrong, which I very well could be, let me know what you think. What's your tier list? Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you have a good day.
So that's pretty much it for our rankings of the lanes. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know inside the comment section. Let us know if there's a different tier list that you would like to do. Feel free to actually make your own tier list. I'll put the link down for the tier list that we used in regards to it. So you can go in, make your own, post it on social medias, add us inside of it. I would love to actually see other players and coaches and staff and even just fans of the league and what their thoughts may be. But with that being said, thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the flip side. Take care.